You're listening to episode 11 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the 5 most important steps to take in order to reach your health goals in 2020. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm your host as always. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about goals and how to reach our goals that we set for ourselves. This podcast is airing on December 30th, 2019. So by the time you're listening to this, we're going to be just a couple days away from a brand new year and even a brand new decade. And something that I've seen a lot of people asking about in my community online, which is the Fed and Fearless Society on Facebook. If you want to join us, definitely look into the show notes because I'd love to have you there. But in our community, one of the questions we ask when people request to join is, what is the specific health challenge or goal that they have that they're working on? And so many of the women joining in the last couple of weeks have been mentioning this idea of struggling with consistency in order to reach their goals, because I'm sure a lot of you understand that consistency is one of the most important ingredients for achieving any goal that we set out for ourselves, whether that's a health goal, a financial goal, a relationship goal. Anything that we're trying to accomplish is going to benefit and even a lot of times absolutely need consistency. So I noticed that a lot of women were mentioning that consistency is one of their biggest challenges. And I wanted to address that challenge on this episode today. Like I said, we're leading into a new year. A lot of people tend to set New Year's resolutions or New Year's goals for themselves. And not that there's anything special about this time of year when it comes to goal setting. I know that a lot of you out there are thinking about what kind of goals you have for 2020. And I hope that this episode today will help you understand how to actually reach those goals in a way that feels empowered as opposed to discouraging. And let's talk about goals in and of themselves, because as you guys probably know by now, this podcast is a faith-based health podcast, which I know is a little bit different than your typical health podcast. But I always want to be talking about anything on this show with the mindset that our faith and our spiritual health is the most important thing in our lives, even above our physical functioning, our physical health. So anything that we discuss, I don't want to make any suggestions that are going to harm your spiritual health or make you feel farther away from God or get in the way of your relationship with God. And if anything, I want your experience with this podcast to help you get closer to God. So in that context, we need to talk about goals from a perspective that brings into account our relationship with God. And I look at goals as being one of the best ways to change and grow from where we are now into the person that we desire to be or the person that we feel we've been called to be. I feel like a lot of times the person that we believe God created us to be is this person that we're visualizing on the other side of this goal accomplishment. So whether that's a physical health goal, a financial health goal, a relationship health goal, I think those of us who are believers would say that we feel like the goals that we set are creating or having us become the person that we were created to be. I hope that's what we're thinking at least, because sometimes people set goals without really thinking about how it aligns with the person that they're called to be and without thinking about how it aligns with their values. And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. But I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here as far as when we're talking about goals, because I feel like in secular society, goals are one of those things that people idolize the pursuit and achievement of goals. And we really put goal achievement on this pedestal where we end up getting a lot of our personal identity from whether or not we've reached our goals. And that's something I really want to make sure we're avoiding. So we're not going to get into a situation where we actually are using our goals as something that gives us our identity or gives us our personal self-worth. We're just looking at goals as being something that can help guide us in the decisions that we're making, in the habits that we're forming, and making sure that we're able to pursue the life that we feel like God called us to pursue. And something that I feel like a lot of people don't realize is that goals are hard to accomplish. Honestly, it's not unusual for us to not see our goals come to fruition. And that's not because that they're impossible. It's just because I think that a lot of the ways that we go about working towards our goals actually create this challenge that makes it hard for us to reach them. And the statistics show that 80% of people fail to achieve their goals, which is obviously the large majority. And even those 20%, the question is like, what kind of goals are they setting? Are they setting goals that are kind of easier to reach, or are they setting goals that are harder? Obviously, everybody's going to have a different level of aptitude for their ability to reach certain goals. But the fact is, no matter how hard your goal is to reach or how big it is, you have a pretty high risk of failing if you go about it the way that most people do. I feel like most people that don't achieve their goals, it's not due to incapability of them on some part. So I think a lot of times we tend to think if we're not reaching our goals, it's because we're not capable of doing that. But I don't think that that's actually what comes into play for most people. I would argue that most people are typically not reaching their goals because of a lack of consistency or commitment. And it's really easy to be consistent and committed in the beginning when you first set a goal. I'm sure a lot of you out there have had that experience where you set a New Year's resolution and the first month you're like super into it and you're super committed, and then life gets in the way, or you hit a speed bump or a roadblock, and suddenly that commitment starts to wane and your consistency starts to wane. Or, maybe being consistent is just really hard based on the kind of lifestyle that you have. So you set yourself up to fail because you've created this expectation of a certain amount of consistency that just isn't reasonable for your season of life. So most of the time, in my opinion, we don't reach the goals that we set for ourselves either because of a lack of consistency or commitment. Occasionally, I will say a lack of goal accomplishment is due to a lack of knowledge about the best process for reaching the goal. And I've definitely been there myself. This is one of the reasons why I hire coaches in so many areas of my life, because I've noticed that even if I'm committed to reaching a goal or I'm being consistent with working towards a goal, I'm not always aware of the best way to be consistent or the best practices to put my energy into to move me towards that goal in the most direct way possible. Because, we're all human. We all have 24 hours in a day. I'm hoping that most of us are sleeping for at least like 7 or 8 of those. And there's only so much that we can do. We only have so much energy, so much time, so much attention. And we need to make sure that we are putting the appropriate energy into the things that are going to move us towards that goal with the least amount of distraction or diversion. Now, that's where coaching or consulting comes into play, where you can actually get a plan to follow or have somebody help you make decisions that can move you forward faster. There is value to learning about the process for reaching goals. I mean, you could be the most committed person to a weight loss goal as an example, but if you didn't know that you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, you might be spending all this time eating in a certain way that's not actually leading to weight loss results. And having somebody that you work with that helps you understand how to create a sustainable, healthy calorie deficit for a specific period of time, that's a strategy that you can learn, and it's knowledge that you can acquire that will actually help your effort that you're putting in and your commitment that you're putting in pay off. So I did want to mention that because I don't want people to think that the only reason why they might not reach a goal is because they're not trying hard enough or something like that, or they're not being committed enough. Commitment's a huge piece. Consistency is a huge piece, but also having appropriate steps and knowledge and a plan to follow can be massively important. So I wanted to throw that in there because I'm definitely a big fan of coaching and consulting, and I have multiple coaches myself, and a lot of the big scary goals that I set for myself, I don't even try to do them alone because I know how much more difficult and time intensive it's going to be if I try to figure it out all on my own. So all that said, like I said before, the most common problem is a lack of consistency and commitment. And I feel like we have to explore the reasons why we get stuck with consistency and commitment, because I don't think that those of you listening to this podcast are the kind of people that give up easily. I don't think that you're a person that's generally uncommitted in life. I'm sure you know people that don't really seem like they're able to commit to anything, or they won't take responsibility for anything. I really don't believe that those of you listening to this podcast are that kind of person. I think that you're very capable of taking responsibility and committing to things that you highly value, and that, you're of the mindset that it needs to be done, or that other people's health and well-being and safety are relying on that being done. And it also, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes, it also comes down to your identity and who you see yourself as when it comes to how committed you can be to certain goals. So again, different goals, different habits are going to affect us differently. We're going to be more or less committed to different goals. You might be somebody who's super committed to your career goals, but when it comes to your health goals, it's really difficult for you to be committed. Others of you might be really consistent with your time studying the Word of God and being in prayer and reading your Bible and all that, but maybe you are really inconsistent with exercise. So I don't think that any of you are just generally uncommitted people, but I'm sure that many of you listening to this podcast have struggled with commitment or consistency in certain areas of your life. I know that I have. I maybe have a little bit more of a just easy to be consistent with health routine, and it's mostly on autopilot at this point. But even with my health, even just recently, we're rolling right into the holidays at the time of this recording, and I know that sleep is a big example of a habit that I've been really inconsistent with, and for some good reasons and some not so good reasons. And it's one of those things where even those of us who are highly knowledgeable about the field of health and about things like sleep deprivation and how that affects your mental and physical health, that doesn't mean that it's easy to be 100% consistent. So I know that for me, there's certain things in my life that I know I'm very consistent with. I tend to be consistent with sleep and I tend to prioritize it, but I'm in a season right now that is testing my ability to stay committed. And so I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, have felt this way before, where you feel like you want to be committed to something, you want to be consistent, but things are getting in the way and you aren't really able to figure out why. So I wanted to talk about the 3 biggest reasons that we get stuck when it comes to consistency or commitment with reaching our goals. And I think these are important to understand because if you know these 3 areas, you can evaluate which of these 3 are the things that are holding you back. Now, of course, there's probably some other areas that could be holding you back as well, but I just want to make sure that you have at least 3 different things that you can consider when it comes to identifying why you're getting stuck with reaching your goals. So the first biggest reason that we get stuck when it comes to being consistent or committed to our goals is that we don't believe we can actually reach our goal. Now, I know it sounds silly to set a goal that you don't even believe that you're capable of accomplishing, but honestly, I feel like a lot of us have had experience with that, where we have this goal, we have this vision of what we want to accomplish, and we have a ton of doubt associated with it. For me, I think a lot of my health goals I feel pretty good about, like even when things like my sleep habits slip and I'm not feeling as good as I could, or I'm seeing some of my old symptoms come back, I generally know how to get back on the wagon with that. Like I know how to start making the choices that allow me to feel my best. And it's not something that I just get like super stuck with, or I feel like, at least at this stage of my life, I don't have kids. So I'm sure if I have kids in the future, this will change. But right now, I feel very in control of my choices when it comes to taking care of my physical needs. So whether I'm doing them or not, maybe not always the way that I know I should be, but the actual knowledge of, okay, if I really want to feel better, I can go to bed earlier and I can make that a priority and not be making excuses to stay up watching movies with my husband or just doing work too late or something like that. So for me, I don't think that health is something that I have any belief issues around, but I know personally there's been areas of business growth, especially this year, as I've been making some big changes in my messaging and the type of work that I'm doing and just growing this Fed and Fearless brand in general. There's been a lot of doubt that's creeped in about what I'm capable of doing. And luckily, because of the coaching that I get from my coaches and mentors, I don't let that doubt actually stop me from taking action, which again is kind of like the real important thing. It's not that we're expecting to never have any doubt. It's just that we need to think about how is that doubt affecting our choices, our actions. But it's not unusual for many people to set goals that if they were being honest with themselves, that they would say that they don't believe that they can actually reach their goal. So with the health side of the equation, I see this in a lot of my clients who maybe they have weight loss goals that they really feel very discouraged around and think that they're not capable of losing weight and keeping it off. I've seen this in my clients who don't get their period on a regular basis, who think that, okay, well, I haven't had my period in years, so maybe I'm just never going to get it back. And so then they get discouraged about being able to have a regular, normal menstrual cycle. I've seen some people have this feeling around their fertility and their ability to get pregnant. I've seen this for people that have injuries where they have been injured for a really long time and they have a lot of pain, and they get to a place where they stop believing that it's even possible to be out of pain. So these are just a couple examples. I'm sure there's 1,000 different examples that I can mention in the health world, but we need to just start to think like, do we actually believe that we can achieve our goal? Because if we don't believe that we can, even if it's like subconsciously we believe that it's not possible for us, we're going to, I don't know if I love the word self-sabotage, but that's kind of the word that comes to mind, is that we're going to self-sabotage ourselves. Because if you don't think something is possible, it is going to really dig into your commitment level. I mean, I wouldn't want to be committed to something that I truly didn't think was possible. It seems kind of like, what's the point of putting all this time and energy and effort into working towards something that is never going to happen? It's depressing to even think about that. So I want to challenge you, if you have a goal that you've set for yourself, whether that's physical health goals, or maybe it's another goal like a financial or career goal or a business goal like the ones that I have. If you have a goal that you want to achieve in 2020, start to think about your level of belief that it's possible for you to reach that goal, and just do some journaling around it. Think about, is this something that even remotely comes up? If I ask myself, like, is it something that's just this little bit of gnawing fear in my stomach when I think about the goal? Do I just have this little sensation that maybe this is never going to happen for me? So just explore that. And again, I'm not saying that you should never feel doubt. There's very few people that I know, even the ones that I know that are really successful in various areas of their lives, none of those people that I'm familiar with that have achieved amazing things would ever say that they were completely without doubt when it came to their process of achieving those goals. So don't expect to not feel any doubt, but just be honest with yourself. Like, what is your level of belief? Do you think that it's likely that you can reach this goal? Do you think that it's just a matter of time? Or do you feel like you're getting into that space where it's like, I really don't think this is going to happen, or it doesn't feel like it's possible for me? So ask yourself, do you believe if you can reach your goal? The second reason that so many of us get stuck with consistency and commitment is that we don't believe that we deserve to reach our goal. So that's like a whole nother level. Like, maybe you think it's possible to reach your goal, but you don't actually believe that you deserve to reach the goal. And then again, that's a source of self-sabotage or something that can eat away at our level of commitment and consistency. I don't know if I'd have to maybe think about this a little bit for myself if I have an example to share of a time where I didn't believe that I deserved to reach the goal. I'm sure if I think about some of the work I've done on my money mindset, that there's still some level of like deservedness in there when it comes to wanting to grow a more lucrative company, because it's not just about me, it's about the people that work for me. It's about the impact that we can have. And I have some goals around the kind of company I want to run. And there's probably, if I was going to dig into some journaling, there's probably some level of feeling that I don't deserve the kind of business that I want to have, or the kind of business I want to grow. So for the health side of things, I mean, I guess if I was going to think about health goals that maybe I don't have a strong sense of deserving to reach the goal, it would probably be around like physical performance. I used to be an athlete in high school and college, and I still feel like I'm kind of athletic, but the last couple of years, I have not been anywhere near as active as I used to be, mostly because I've been putting so much energy and time into growing my business, and then also growing my in-person community with my church and my friends and my relationship. And I'm okay with that. Like, that's not something I'm disappointed about or sad about. But I will say, sometimes I think about my physical capabilities and what I could potentially accomplish if I were to take them more seriously. And there's probably, like, if I was really honest, there's probably a little bit of a lack of believing that I deserve to be super fit. Again, it's not super high on my values list, so it's not really something that I'm worried about. But if I was going to say, do I want to spend my time doing that kind of work to get to a place where I am very athletic and at the peak of fitness for a 30-something-year-old? Maybe I don't feel like I deserve it. I don't know. I have to explore that a little bit for myself. But I think right now for me, a lot of it comes down to priorities. And that's something that we'll talk about when we talk about the 5 steps to reach your goals. But it's okay if it's not a priority for you. Just think about, do you feel like you deserve to reach the goal? I think guilt is a really common emotion that a lot of Christian people have, which is kind of, listen, I'm not saying that I don't ever feel guilt about things. I definitely do. But it's funny to me that we, from a faith-based perspective, we're not supposed to be feeling chronic guilt. It's not something that God wants for us. Jesus died so that we would have freedom and we would have access to God and to be in relationship with him and to not be found guilty for the sins and transgressions that we make, which we all make every single day. So this idea of feeling chronic guilt about wanting what we want or, having needs or anything like that just is not biblical whatsoever. Because I think I might have mentioned this before, but even Jesus took time to take care of himself. Like, he went away to pray and to be alone, or, he made sure he was eating meals, or he made sure he was getting rest. Like, it's not like he just did everything for other people and never felt like he deserved to have his needs met. He was just very much focused on how his ability to serve other people was being managed. So it wasn't about getting what he wanted. It was about what was going to make him the most effective as really God's representative on earth. So I want to make sure that we're not looking at meeting our own needs or working towards certain goals as something that should create this sensation of guilt in our emotions or our thoughts. But it is something that I do find that a lot of Christian women deal with guilt. And this belief that we don't deserve to achieve our goal is something that doesn't always present so obviously, but it is a very subtle and really pernicious issue that can very easily derail a person's ability to reach their goals. So, like, for example, if you're a mom and you put your kids' needs above your own needs all the time, that might be a source of feeling like you don't deserve to reach your goal. Or if you're married and you feel like, serving your husband is more important than whether or not you're able to actualize your own goals. Like, that's an area where maybe you feel like you don't deserve it. Or, again, with financial goals, but maybe this applies to health as well. Maybe you feel like it's greedy to have certain goals in certain areas of your life, and you feel like you don't deserve the things that you want to accomplish. I would just take a minute to explore that and think about, do you feel like you don't deserve to reach the goals that you've set for yourself? And why is that? Is it because you feel like you're being disobedient to God in setting that goal? Or is it because you have this false belief that somehow you achieving your goal is doing harm to somebody else? So think about it. And again, do some journaling around it and think about, do you believe that you deserve to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself? And if not, why not? And if so, why? Like, just explore that question. The third common reason that we get stuck with a lack of consistency or commitment is that we're so focused on reaching the goal itself that we completely ignore the actual process and the person that we're becoming as we work towards the goal. And what I mean by this is more about our emotional attachment. But a lot of times when we set goals, it's like we aren't happy or satisfied until that goal is met. And we take no joy or pleasure or satisfaction in the journey that we're on in order to achieve that goal. And I know it's like so cliche to say it's the journey, not the destination, but I really think that that's the way we need to think about goal pursuit, because if you're one of those 80% of people that do not actually achieve the goal, I think there's two different ways that you can react emotionally to that lack of goal achievement. One would be you're super depressed about it. You feel like crap. You're just like, oh, I'm such a failure. Like, just telling yourself all these stories about who you are and like what it means that you didn't achieve the goal and what that says about you as a person, which I think a lot of people go that route when they don't achieve the actual goal that they set. They start to tell themselves what that means about who they are, and they start to identify with that as a failure. And that's a super dangerous place to be. So we definitely don't want to be going down that route. The other option, the other direction we can take if we don't actually reach a goal that we set for ourselves, is that we can have gratitude for the person that we became or that we are becoming on the journey to reaching the goal. So this can apply to health goals. It can apply to any goal, really. I know for me, the business growth goal is the thing that's kind of like my number one focus right now. So it's always the easiest example to share. But if I was only thinking about revenue goals as being like, that's the thing that matters most. And if I get to the end of the year and let's say I had a goal to have $500,000 of revenue in my business and I only had 250,000 or something like that for revenue, I could look at that and say, oh, I didn't reach my goal. I didn't even come close to reaching my goal. I'm a failure. My business is a failure. Like, this is never going to happen. I might as well give up because, I set these goals for myself and I didn't reach them. So that's kind of the more negative way to think about the actual experience of reaching or not reaching a goal. If we wanted to take a more positive and just supportive and joyful approach to looking at our goals, you could say, hey, yeah, I didn't hit that revenue goal and it's okay, because that hitting that revenue goal says nothing about who I am or what the ability of my business growth is or what my ability as a business owner is. And let's think about all the things that I did this year to even bring in 250,000 of revenue for the year for the company. So, you can start to think about what was the growth that I experienced and who did I become in this process of increasing my revenue, even if I didn't hit my goal. And, what were some of the positives that came from the decisions I made in pursuit of this goal? Like, just looking at the journey itself. And again, it's not always about ourselves. It could be about what are the relationships that you built in pursuit of that goal? What was, learning how to be self-disciplined? How did that play out into other areas of your life that were positive for yourself and for other people? So just starting to think about the process of working towards goals is just as valuable as reaching the goal itself, if not more valuable. Because I will say, for me, I've reached a number of goals in my life, and I'm sure a lot of you listening have achieved goals as well. I'm sure there's nobody out there that's never achieved something that they set out to do. But even when you hit the goal, it's not like all of a sudden now your life is complete and you'll be happy for the rest of your life because you hit this goal. I really think from my experience, every time I hit a goal, it's kind of like, awesome. Now what's next? You're kind of thinking like, all right, cool. I did that. So what's the next goal I want to set? So the actual goal accomplishment itself should not be our primary focus of either our emotional state or our mental state in general. We need to think about like, who am I becoming as I'm working towards this goal? And how does the actual process of even setting and working towards goals help me become my best self, whether or not I achieve the actual goal I set out for myself? So even if we ended the podcast episode there, I feel like that little nugget could be what makes or breaks your ability to reach your goals in 2020. Because if you are focused so heavily on the outcome and not on the process that you're going through to reach that goal, you're gonna at some point be disappointed, even if you reach the goal, because you'll realize that that goal accomplishment is not something that's giving you the kind of emotional and personal satisfaction that you think it's gonna give you. And the cool thing about focusing on the process is that even if you don't reach your goals, you can still feel really proud of yourself and you can still feel really positively about what you've done, even if you don't achieve what you set out to achieve. And I really want to just hammer into this thought that what we believe about ourselves and what we believe about our circumstances has way more influence on our actual habits and the actions that we take than anything else. Because the idea of setting goals, it always comes down to this desire to be a certain person, right? Like you have this vision of who you are and who you could be if you were to reach these goals, whether they're health goals, financial goals, relationship goals, like whatever it is, you're seeing yourself in the future as being someone who has this outcome that you want to achieve. And if you don't see yourself as somebody who's capable of being that person, or somebody who honestly already has that person inside of them, it's going to be very difficult to make the habit changes and to make those daily decisions that actually help you move towards that outcome that you want to achieve. Because every single day, the decisions and the actions that you take, the steps that you take, those are a direct reflection of who you see yourself as and what you see as being possible for you. So we can jump into the 5 steps I want to share with you to reach your goals in 2020, but I just want you to have that concept in mind that your personal identity and who you're being is the most important thing when it comes to taking the action that's going to actually help you achieve your goals. So let's go over those 5 steps because I want to give you guys some things that you can actually do leading into the new year. If you have goals that you're setting for yourself, then you're going to need these steps to be able to actually achieve them, even if you have a plan. Because if you have a plan, like that's great. That's one of the main things you need. But a plan is not enough. You really do need this ability to see yourself as somebody who's capable of achieving those goals. So the first step to reach your goals in 2020 is to visualize the version of yourself that you want to become. I mentioned this a couple minutes ago, where if you think about setting goals, what we're really doing is creating a vision of who we could be. And that can apply to your health. That can apply to any other goal that you're setting, but you're imagining this person, this future you that's already achieved her goal. And it's so important to be able to visualize that, because a lot of people that I work with when I do private consulting or even in my group programs, when we talk about goal setting, they can be kind of vague about the goals that they want to achieve. Like they'll say, I just want to feel healthy. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel healthy, but just saying that you want to feel healthy does not give you any direction as far as what kind of habits you might take to get there. Versus saying, like for me, I was giving the example of wanting to be a little bit more consistent with my sleep habits. Yes, that's going to help me feel more healthy if I'm sleeping more, but I can say to myself, I want to be somebody who wakes up with good physical and mental energy and doesn't need caffeine or a nap or something to be able to function. And not that that's totally where I'm at this point, but I've definitely been there before, and I don't want to feel that way. I know that if I'm going to do the work that I want to do, and if I want to grow my business to the level I want to grow it to, I need to be mentally on my game as much as possible. And for me, I know that sleep is a big part of that. And so I can see this person, this future Laura, who gets enough sleep, has a really consistent sleep routine, wakes up early, and early is in quotes because I know early for me is not early for everybody else. But waking up earlier than I would if I wasn't going to bed on time, and being able to spend some time journaling and reading the Bible and all the things that I like to do to set my day up, and having that energy throughout the day to focus on the work I want to do, to create really great content, to do good podcasts, like all the things that I want to be able to do, all hitch onto my ability to get good sleep. So you see how I'm really fleshing out the image of this person that I know I'm capable of being and that I want to be. And that's like, if I imagine my future self, I imagine this person who has a really healthy sleep routine and has a lot of energy to do the work that she wants to do. So that's way more specific and way more of a vision for that than just saying I want to be healthy. And I know sometimes it can feel a little bit difficult to come up with specifics about how you want to feel or what kind of changes you want to see. But again, it's really, really important to have this sense of the what, and to have like a vision of what you want to achieve, and to be very clear about what the outcomes that you desire are, because it will make a huge impact on the actual steps that you take and how you direct your energy and how you decide to spend your time and your money and your energy on achieving those goals. The second step to reach your goals in 2020 is to identify your why. So if you know the what, then you have to think about the why. Because you can have a very clear what, like let's just use weight loss as an example. Maybe you're like very certain that you want to lose 30 pounds in 2020. And it's obviously a very specific goal. And maybe you can imagine what will be different in your life if you were to lose that weight. Maybe you think about, okay, I'll be more athletic. I'll be able to fit into my clothes better. I'll have more energy, like whatever you're imagining that outcome to be. Maybe you have it very clear in your mind that, the 30 pounds of weight loss is the thing that you want to focus on. Then you have to ask yourself why. And I kind of touched on that a little bit, saying like, okay, more energy, better athletic performance, being able to get up and down off the floor with your kids, like whatever it is, that why is what's going to drive you so much more than just having this clear idea of what. So using my own example, I would say going to bed on time and being able to be super productive during the day to grow my business. If I didn't care about reaching the people that I want to reach and having the impact I want to have, and, following the vision that I feel like God's put in my life for the kind of work I want to do, maybe it wouldn't matter. Honestly, like maybe going to bed on time isn't valuable because there are some sacrifices that come along with going to bed on time. I don't get to spend as much time with my husband because he gets home from work and we have a couple hours at the end of the day. And the sooner I go to bed, that means it's cutting into time together. So that's a sacrifice that I have to make if I want to be consistent with that goal of going to bed on time. So I have to be very clear about why it's valuable to me, because if I don't know what the value is, then why would I cut into the time that I'm spending with my husband? Why shouldn't I stay up as late as him and just like wake up whenever and just kind of do whatever during the day? Like it really needs to be very clear in your mind. How does this new version of you line up with what's important to you or what your core values are? Spending some time identifying those core values can be really helpful. This is something that I teach in my Fed and Fearless program, because I feel like a lot of us don't stop to think about what our core values are, so we can't make decisions that align with those core values. But it's something that I think we all have a sense of what is most important to us and what our priorities are and what order our priorities are in. Sometimes we do have to check those core values and those priorities against what we feel like God's calling us to, because maybe one of your core values is fitness, but God's telling you that you are overly focused on fitness and you need to let go of that. then obviously we need to make some adjustments to our core values because if it's against God's will for our lives, then that's not going to lead us down a path that is going to be our best outcomes, because God always has the best plan for us. And if we're ignoring his guidance and his instruction, then we're not going to end up in the best place that we could end up if we were to listen to him. So it is very important that whatever your why is not only lines up with your core values, but that those core values also align with who you believe God is calling you to be and the things that God wants you to focus on and to prioritize. Because I do think sometimes we can set core values that tend to be maybe not aligned with what God's calling us to. And it doesn't always work out the best for us if we're just listening to our own core values. So, and I'm not saying to ignore your core values. I think God created our core values with a purpose. And if you're passionate about fitness, for example, that doesn't mean that you have to give up fitness as a core value. It could just mean that you have to make sure that it's in the appropriate order of priorities, or that you're using your core value of fitness to pursue the purpose that God has for you, as opposed to just glorifying your own body. So anyway, just thinking about your why is something that I don't think people spend enough time doing when they're setting goals. And the more clear you can get about not only the vision of what that outcome is, but also the why, the easier it'll be to be consistent and committed to your goals. So the third step to reach your goal in 2020 is to identify the habits and the decisions that this future you would make to get to where they are. So I actually just had this conversation with a client a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about, and I'll just use, we'll call her Kelly. So Kelly was talking about how she was really struggling to make the changes that she knew she needed to make that were going against her old way of living, that she's working on changing because her old habits are not serving her well, and they're not helping her be her healthiest self, and they're creating a lot of stress and not allowing her to walk out the life that God created her for with the most freedom and joy and purpose. So we talked about how a lot of the decisions that she makes are coming from the identity as the old Kelly. So the old Kelly is somebody who is achievement oriented and only is concerned about productivity and makes decisions that prioritize productivity over anything else, which includes physical health or spiritual health. And even though she's made so much progress in those areas, I think that old identity still comes up because she says to herself, like, well, that's just who I am, or that's the kind of person I am, or that's my personality. So she's identifying with her old identity. What we want her to do, and what Kelly and I talked about, was this idea of thinking about who is future Kelly. And again, this kind of goes back to that visualizing the version of you that you want to become, but thinking about who is this future Kelly and what kind of things does she value and what kind of things has she accomplished and what choices does she make when these decisions or these opportunities come up. So thinking about the habits and the decisions and the action steps that future you would be taking to either reach or maintain the goal that she's accomplished, we then can apply those habits and decisions to our current situation. So the best way to explain this is like, basically you think about yourself as, I'm trying to remember, I think we called her, oh gosh, we had come up with a name and now I can't remember. So I apologize, but we had come up with a name for this particular client. I think one of the examples I used was professional athlete Kelly. And the reason why we use that is because not that she is a professional athlete, but one of the things that she struggles with is rest and downtime and eating enough and, justifying taking time out of her day to eat when she's not hungry, that kind of thing. So I had her imagine if she was a professional athlete, what kind of decisions do you think she'd be making in order to perform her best? Since we had established that performance and energy and ability to show up as her best self was one of this person's core values. And I would argue that most athletes, unless they're dealing with any sort of like severe mental or emotional health issues, most athletes think about their choices from the perspective, what's going to maximize my performance on a day-to-day basis. So we were talking about that and saying like, okay, well, if you were a professional athlete, what would you do with your food? Would you just wait till you were hungry, or would you actually set time aside to make sure you were eating enough to fuel your day and not just like running on fumes and thinking that you can, handle it because you're functional, but maybe you're not feeling your best. So that was like a light bulb moment for her to start thinking about, okay, actually, if I want to be my maximally productive and most capable person, I do need to feed myself and I need to prioritize that. And it's not about being able to get by without eating. It's more about how does food fuel the work that I am called to do. So you can come up with this idea for yourself. Like you can give her a name. You can say like, like for me, if I was, one of my goals is to, at some point have a $1 million business. So you can call yourself, or I could call myself $1 Million Laura or 7-Figure Laura, like any of those things that can identify what the goal is. Being able to say what decision would she make in this situation and then making that decision. So even though something like doing a podcast, especially these solo episodes, gives me some stress and I don't always feel super confident in my ability to produce a good podcast, I'm growing that confidence. It's taken like years at this point to get to a place where I feel like remotely calm doing these episodes. But it would be a lot easier for me to be like, I don't really feel like doing it and it's uncomfortable, so I'm going to skip it. But if I think about 7-Figure Laura, who runs a business that employs people and makes a huge impact on the world, I know that the decisions that she would make would be to show up and record a great podcast and to do the prep work and all that stuff. So helping myself make these decisions that align with this future version of me is what's actually going to lead to me becoming that future version of myself. So hopefully that makes sense. And we can go back to the sleep example. If I have this, this 7-Figure Laura idea in my head and it's like, okay, well, what decisions does she make? She values her sleep and she knows that if she's going to be her best self, she needs that sleep to be able to function and to have the best cognitive ability and to be able to connect with people and to be able to lead people that she's working with on her team. So sleeping is a really important habit, and she would go to bed on time. She wouldn't stay up watching TV. She wouldn't, press snooze 20 times and sleep in. Like these are just the things that a person who is at that level wouldn't do, because there'd be no way she would reach that level with making those choices. So I think about it that way. So that helps me when the time comes to decide, am I going to go to bed? Am I going to sleep in? Like, what am I going to do? It allows me to make the decision that actually would lead to me reaching the goal. And that doesn't mean that, I'm not saying I'm incapable of creating $1 million business, but that doesn't mean that the only sign that I've achieved anything is that I have $1 million business. It's just like, it's this vision of a person who's achieved more than me, or who is, living in a way that I want to live, and kind of retro engineering, like what kind of decisions did she make to get there? And then trying to make those decisions with the understanding that I've never run $1 million business, so I don't actually know all the decisions that $1 million business owner has to make to get to where they are. But if I have that mindset of learning what that looks like, then that is how I'm going to eventually reach that goal. So again, it can be the same thing with a health goal. It can be the same thing with a relationship goal. Like let's say you're single and you have a goal of meeting a man to get married to. You start thinking like, well, what kind of decisions would somebody who's married have made to get to the place of being married? Maybe that's going on more dates. Maybe that's joining an online dating website like I did to meet my husband. Maybe that is doing some more extracurricular activities or not working as much. Like just thinking, what would have to happen for me in the future to be married if right now I don't know anybody, I'm not dating anybody, and I don't have any like friends that I like know have single friends or something like that. So because it's easy to stay in our box of like, oh, well, it's comfortable to just like be alone and because I've been there. I don't want to go on a tangent, but before I met my husband, I was pretty comfortable being single. Like I knew that God was telling me it was time to start looking for a husband. And I think a month after he told me that, I met my husband, Josh. But it was kind of like, I didn't really feel like dating. I really didn't enjoy dating. And it was kind of, I was dreading it a little bit, but I recognize that, okay, God says that I'm going to get married. And I know that if I'm going to get married, I have to do the things that would allow me to meet a man. And one of those was doing online dating. And it was super uncomfortable, but that's where I met my husband. And it was something that then created the outcome of meeting and marrying my spouse. So it's not always something that you know is going to work out when you're doing it, but you're just making those decisions that would create the possibility of becoming that person that you feel called to become. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, I'm trying to use different examples like relationships, finance, health, because I want you to see that it doesn't really matter what the actual goal is. All that matters is that you have the right steps to get there. Okay, so, and the one thing I do want to remind you with these habits and decisions and action steps is that they don't have to be these like massive world-changing steps. They can be very small steps or habits that ultimately add up to the change that you want to see in your reality. Just to use an example with the sleep, maybe I'm not going to go to bed at like 9 o'clock every night and wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and be like, Miss Energizer Bunny for the whole day. I don't know if I see myself as having that kind of lifestyle. But maybe I say, well, let me make sure I'm getting in bed at least by 10:30. Like that's much better than if I was going to bed at like 11:30 or 12 or something. So, just thinking about what are the small steps that you can take that can move you in that direction. They don't have to be these like humongous, complete reversals of the current habits that you have. So step number 4 to reach your goals in 2020 is to stay detached from the outcome. Now, this one is super hard. I've definitely been there myself. Sometimes I still struggle with this, but the idea of staying detached from the outcome means that we don't let our current circumstances determine what is possible for us. And we don't let whether or not we're reaching our goals or whether or not we're seeing the progress that we want to see deter us from taking steps towards that goal. Because I think what can happen is if you don't reach the goal, or if you've been working on a goal for a really long time, like maybe you've been working on it for years and you're not seeing the results you want to see, if you create a story about that emotionally, about what that means for you and what's possible for you, eventually you're going to give up. Like that's what's going to happen. Because why, if you thought that you either weren't capable or that there was too much pain associated with the process of working towards those goals, why would you continue working on them? I think it's like human nature to not want to feel pain all the time. And so if we're allowing ourselves to experience emotional pain when we're not reaching our goals, then that's going to be super discouraging. And we're going to give up before we get to an opportunity to actually make the breakthroughs we want to make. And again, this is really difficult. So I don't want you guys to think, oh, it's so easy to emotionally detach from the outcome. I think this has been an area for me, especially over this past year, that I've really, really had to work on. When I have a goal in mind or I have something that I want to accomplish and it doesn't work out the way I want it to, or maybe it's a total failure, I can't let myself get emotionally distraught about that outcome or start to let myself tell myself stories about what that means for me and what my future is going to look like. So we have to stay detached from the outcome. That doesn't mean that we just don't care, because obviously if we don't care about the outcome at all, we're not going to take the steps to do it. So that's where that visualization and identifying your why is going to come in. But allowing it to be a situation where you can emotionally detach from whether or not you reach the goal, and you don't let that either define who you are or define how you talk about yourself or think about yourself. And it doesn't define your emotional state on a day-to-day basis. That's the ultimate goal for being detached from the outcome. And it's definitely a process to learn how to do that. And every time you hit a goal, like the next goal you set is going to have a whole new set of challenges, emotional challenges, feeling like you're, struggling with the emotional discouragement that can come when you are not reaching the goal that you set for yourself. So we just want to really try to detach as much as possible from the outcome. Don't let the outcome define who you are. Only God defines who you are. And whether or not you reach your goal is not the most important thing. So setting goals and detaching from the outcome of those goals is something that's very challenging. I don't think a lot of people are very successful at it, but it is something worth putting energy into learning how to do, because the more we can do it, the more we can set really big, scary goals for ourselves that do not create like a personality crisis or something if we don't reach them. Because it's, really a goal shouldn't be scary if not reaching that goal doesn't say anything about who you are. And that's where I want you guys to all get. That's the idea of being fearless in your pursuit of your God-given purpose, is this concept of you can shoot for goals that maybe God's put on your heart that feel like, oh my gosh, these are huge goals, but you're not so attached to the outcome that, the idea of not reaching them is going to crush you. So definitely a difficult step to take, but something that's super important if you're going to be able to set challenging goals for yourself and work towards those goals without it negatively impacting your mental or spiritual health. And then the final step 5 to reach your health goals in 2020 is to regularly reassess. And what that means is asking yourself questions about what are the choices that you're making? What are the action steps that you're taking? And are you still on the right path? Are you seeing progress towards your goal? Are you even happy with the changes that you've made, or have they negatively impacted your quality of life? Like a great example of this is if you have a fitness goal and you're being super consistent with your exercise routine and you're seeing strength gains, you're seeing performance gains, whatever that is, but you're also completely obsessed with being at the gym and you don't see friends anymore because you're skipping social occasions to go to the gym. We just had an interview with my client, Natalie, who this was her for a long time. She was so dedicated to her fitness routine that she was completely avoiding social occasions because she didn't feel like she could make any sort of adjustment to her schedule. So the reassessment process for her showed her that, yeah, maybe you're getting some fitness results that come from those habits, but is that actually worth the trade-off of having to avoid social interaction and miss out on time to build relationships? So it's not just about whether or not you're actually moving towards the goal. It's also about, do you like the life that is being created with the steps that you're taking? Because I can even use business growth as an example. One of the things I see in a lot of the business people, the women that run online business that I mentor, so often they're working so hard and they're working 80 hours a week, and they're so committed and they're consistent and they show up every day and they do the work, but they also are exhausted and they feel physically ill from the amount that they're working, and they're not happy with that. And so, yeah, maybe they're seeing progress and maybe they're seeing an increase in their financial status in their business, and cool, that's awesome if that's a goal of yours, but is it worth the trade-off of exhausting yourself, running yourself into the ground, feeling miserable, feeling like, physically ill all the time because you're so stressed? I would say no, that's not something in my mind. I mean, everybody has their own opinion, but in my mind, it's not something that's worth experiencing just to reach the financial goal. And I also don't think it's even necessary. From what I've learned from the various mentors I've worked with and what I've seen in my own business growth, I don't believe it's necessary to be working yourself to the bone to see the results you want to see in your business. So that's another conversation for another day, but I think we can apply that to our health goals as well. You should not feel like you're giving up things that matter to you and affect your quality of life just to work towards that goal. And on the flip side, you also want to make sure that you're not putting energy into things that aren't actually making any progress for you. Now, this can be a little tricky because sometimes things just take time, and sometimes they take experimentation and they take just minor tweaks in order for something to really work for you. But obviously time is a huge variable when it comes to reaching goals. So we can't leave that out as being something that can slow your progress. It's just literally how much time that change takes sometimes. But if you're not making any progress for months, or maybe you're seeing reversal of progress, or you're seeing your health deteriorate, then I really want you to reassess, am I actually making the changes or taking the steps that are going to help me reach this goal? Because you could be so committed and so focused and so consistent and be very clear about what you want to accomplish, be very clear about why you want to accomplish it, have a plan that you're following and be detached from the outcome, but you could be making no progress and not realize that the problem is actually that the plan you're implementing is not working for you. So that's why the reassessment piece is so important, because I see so many women that I work with, either privately or in my group programs, that they're not reassessing because they've been told that this is the way to do it. Like maybe they're doing a keto diet combined with CrossFit, and they were told that that's the best way to get lean and healthy and look great and like all the things that they want to accomplish, but they're actually killing their hormone health, and they're exhausted, and they have digestive issues, and they're, there's all these things, they're gaining weight maybe. And so even though that they think that they have a plan that they're following that's supposed to be good because maybe they saw it online or they worked with a coach or something, if they're not getting the results that they want to get, or they're actually moving away from the results they want to get, then they need to reassess, okay, what are the actual action steps that you're taking? And is this really the best way to do things? I really feel like this is where coaching and mentorship comes into play, whether you're looking for a health coach, a business mentor, whatever. If you're not sure if you're on the right path, then you need some help figuring that out, because it's very difficult to know where you're going wrong. Like I said a few minutes ago, even though I have this like vision of having $1 million business, I don't necessarily know all the steps that it takes to get there. And I don't always know the best decisions. And I don't always know what are the most important activities I should be putting my energy into. So I have a coach that helps me. I buy programs that help me. Like I invest in learning and mentorship to get to a place where I do have action steps to take that are moving me towards my goals. So that reassessment process happens no matter what your goals are, and thinking about, am I on the right path? Do I feel confident that I'm taking the right steps? Should I get some consulting or mentorship around this area to help me make those decisions? This is something that will help you reach your goals, and it'll help you reach your goals a lot faster and with less frustration and pain than if you were to just kind of keep running yourself in circles, thinking that you're doing all this work, and technically you are doing a lot of work, but it's not getting you to where you want to be. So just to recap, the 5 steps to reach your goals, health and otherwise, in 2020. Step 1 is to visualize the version of you that you want to become, that this person has already reached her goal. Step 2 is to identify your why, and how does this new version of you line up with your core values and the person that God called you to be. Step 3 is to identify the habits and decisions that this future you would make to get to where they are in the future. Step 4 is to stay emotionally detached from the outcome. And then step 5 is to reassess regularly and get support on your plan if necessary. All right, so I hope that was helpful. I hope that this has given you some ideas about what you might work on if you are setting goals for 2020, to think about these different steps and run your goal through these steps and think about, how does this apply to who I want to be in the future, what my core values are, like what are the habits and action steps that would help me get there? Can I stay emotionally detached from this outcome? And do I have a plan to follow that I'm confident will get me those results? And if not, who can help me set a plan that's going to get me there? So let me know you can DM me on Instagram or write some comments in the notes section on this podcast episode on my blog, which is lauraschoenfeldrd.com. Let me know which of these steps was the most surprising or most impactful for you, or if you go through this whole 5-step process, what you discovered about your goals that you maybe didn't realize before. I would love to connect with you. I'd love to know how this content is helping you move forward in the pursuit of your bigger God-given purpose, and to be able to have the healthy body that will fuel your pursuit of that purpose. And if you're somebody who is thinking about making some adjustments to the way that you identify and the way that you think about yourself and the way that you are able to commit to these goals from a place of self-worth and having a vision of who you are inside, not just who you could be, but who you actually are inside, then I would love to invite you to a 5-day challenge that I'm running in a couple of days from now. It's called the Faith Over Fear 5-Day Body Confidence Challenge. And what I would love to help you do in this challenge is to learn how to replace negative self-talk with healthy spiritual truths. So that way you can honor God with the way that you care for your body and reach your health goals for 2020. We start the challenge on January 2nd, 2020, which is, like I said, just in a couple days from now. We still have the opportunity to register for this free challenge. So definitely grab your spot. And we do have actually the day of this podcast. Hopefully you guys are listening to the day of. If you're watching the replay or listening to the replay of this, then you can still join as long as it's in early January. But if you're listening to this episode the day it comes out, we actually have our first intro video to the challenge that I'm going to teach you some of the concepts that we talked about today. We're going to go into more detail about the mistakes that a lot of women make when they're trying to reach their goals and the biggest changes you need to make in order to be successful in pursuing your healthiest self. And the challenge is really going to focus more on beliefs and body confidence so that you can implement the changes that you want to make. And as I always say, health is a tool to pursue your purpose. God put you here for a reason. I don't want you to feel stressed and obsessed about health and wellness. And I don't want your physical health to be something that's holding you back from pursuing your purpose. And my goal with this challenge is to show you how you can experience true freedom in your health and incredible purpose for your life by changing the way that you think about yourself and the way that you think about your goals and how to achieve those goals. So if you want to join the challenge, the link is at fedandfearless.com/challenge. You'll get immediate access to we have an online portal for the challenge. And we also have a Facebook group associated with the challenge as well. You'll get immediate access to both of those. And then every day of the challenge, we're going to send out reminder emails of the steps that you're going to do on each day. And I'm also going to be giving away a free case review call with me. So that's a free 75-minute call where we'll go over your personal health goals and the things that you want to accomplish in 2020. And we'll come up with a plan that's really targeted and tailored for you. And that is something that is currently valued at $497. I'm giving that away to one of you who completes all 5 days of the challenge. So that is just to help sweeten the pot a little bit. I really want to help you guys take these steps. And I know that you're going to experience a ton of life change in 2020 if you do implement the steps that we go through in this challenge. And I know that this time of year can be kind of busy and there's a lot of stuff going on. So I want to give you some incentive to show up and participate on the days that we're doing it. So like I said, I'm going to give away one case review to one of you who does all 5 days of the challenge. So you definitely want to follow along and get started with us by January 2nd so that you can enter to win. If you're listening to this after January 2nd, it's totally okay. You can still participate. I don't want you to let that deter you from getting involved, but it is something that I hope that I can catch you before January 2nd so that you can participate as we're going through the 5 steps together and possibly even win that free case review. So go to fedandfearless.com/challenge. That's where you can register, get access to the Facebook group, and I'm super excited to support you through this and to get to know you guys better and to understand what kind of challenges you're facing and to help you reach those goals that you've set for yourself for 2020. And I'm just so honored that you are still listening to the podcast and that I can support you in becoming your most fearlessly healthy self. So I will see you there. I will see you inside the challenge. And I'm also excited to see you on next week's episode of the podcast. But it's been great chatting with you guys today, and I'll look forward to hanging out with you next week. Take care, everybody. Are you a Christian woman who wants to learn how to replace negative self-talk with healthy spiritual truths so you can honor God with the way you care for your body? Then I have a special invitation for you. Starting on Monday, December 30th, I'm hosting a special 5-day body confidence challenge called Faith Over Fear. In this challenge, I'll walk you through the 5 most important steps you need to take in order to eliminate negative self-talk and develop a faith-centered approach to food and fitness that creates confidence and positivity in your body. To register, go to fedandfearless.com/challenge and sign up now. We officially start on December 30th, and you don't want to miss any part of this challenge if you can help it. So go to fedandfearless.com/challenge to grab your spot. You'll get instant access to the challenge program, as well as an invitation to our exclusive private Facebook group where we'll be hosting everyone who's participating. I can't wait to help you use food and fitness to fuel your purpose. I'll see you there.